Sandra Bullock stepped out of the sleek black car and felt a ripple of excitement. She wore a soft navy dress that caught the light like midnight on a calm sea. Her hair fell in gentle waves around her face. She smiled at the small crowd of fans and photographers waiting on the red carpet. The air smelled of fresh flowers and expensive perfume. Inside, music played softly as glass doors opened into a grand ballroom filled with sparkling chandeliers. She took a slow breath, reminding herself that tonight was about celebration and honor. Her heart beat a little faster, but she felt ready to share this happy moment with everyone. A few steps inside, she saw old friends and new faces. Laughter drifted from clusters of people holding champagne flutes. A server offered her a glass, and she accepted with grace, raising it in a gentle toast to those nearby. She noticed warm smiles and nods of respect. Reporters whispered questions into small microphones, but she kept her answers light and kind. She loved meeting fans and meeting colleagues, the people who cheered for her work and cheered for her efforts in charity. Tonight felt like a night to shine and to give back. As she walked further into the ballroom, she caught sight of a journalist she knew only by reputation. The journalist, clipboard in hand, looked busy and serious. He whispered notes into his pen, eyes flicking up to watch her every move. She felt familiar nerves creep in, but she reminded herself that interviews were part of the job. She offered a polite nod and moved on. She wanted to enjoy the evening rather than face more questions about her next film. Still, she tried to stay polite and friendly. Across the room, near a tall marble column, two women in emerald gowns leaned close to each other, speaking in quiet tones. One woman flicked her hair and pointed discreetly at Sandra. The other shook her head and pressed her lips together. Their laughter was soft, but Sandra sensed it carried an edge. She paused, her gaze shifting to their direction. Their eyes held a glint that felt like gossip ready to spread. For a moment, she felt a cold drop in her stomach. Then she shook her head, as if to clear the thought. She reminded herself that she was strong and respected. Just then, a rival actor approached with a grin that did not reach his eyes. He had worked with Sandra before on a small project. On set, they had shared a friendly moment over coffee, but tonight his mood seemed different. As he passed by, he leaned close enough for only Sandra to hear. In a low, mocking voice, he repeated, "A mean rumor about her latest movie?" His words hung in the air like a dark cloud. The sentence was short but full of poison. Sandra felt her chest tighten and a blush rise to her cheeks. She forced a smile and kept walking, trying not to show her pain. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the glass of champagne. The rich taste of the drink did not comfort her right away. Instead, she felt as if all eyes turned to her, watching to see how she would react. She felt small and alone in a room, full of bright lights and happy people. She longed for a friendly voice to cut through the whispering shadows. She longed for someone to remind her she was more than a rumor. Sandra stepped away from the crowd and found a quiet spot near a tall window. Outside, the city lights twinkled like distant stars. She looked at her reflection in the glass and saw sadness in her own eyes. She thought of her years of hard work, the kindness she tried to show, and the genuine care she felt for her fans. She remembered the stories she had told on screen, the laughter she had shared, and the tears she had shed for good causes. A single tear slid down her cheek, and she quickly wiped it away. She pressed her hand to her heart and took a deep breath. She reminded herself that rumors were just words, and words could not touch her core strength. She repeated a small prayer in her mind, asking for calm and courage. The gentle hum of the party flowed around her, but it felt distant. She focused on the soft glow of candlelight reflecting on crystal glasses. She imagined those lights were gentle beacons guiding her back to joy. For a moment, she closed her eyes and let the warm music fill her mind. She pictured the faces of her family and true friends who believed in her. She remembered her mother's encouragement, her father's steady voice, and her sister's bright laughter. She felt their love like a soft blanket around her shoulders. The tightness in her chest loosened, and her breathing grew steady again. She opened her eyes and straightened her shoulders. determined not to let one cruel whisper steal her happiness. Sandra slipped her hand into the pocket of her dress and found her phone. She typed a quick message to a trusted friend, asking for a little encouragement and a reminder that she mattered. Then she pocketed her phone and lifted her chin. She took one last look at her reflection, saw the brave woman looking back, and smiled softly. With that quiet promise to herself, she stepped away from the window and back toward the gathering lights of the ballroom, ready to face whatever the night held with grace and strength. Keanu Reeves moved through the crowded ballroom with his easy grace. He had arrived that evening to support a fellow actor and friend. The soft glow of chandeliers painted golden patterns on polished marble floors. Music drifted from a stage where a small band played a gentle jazz tune. Keanu felt at home among the laughter and applause, but his calm mind noticed everything around him. He saw the way waiters wove through clusters of guests carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres. He heard the low hum of conversation and the occasional pop of a champagne cork as he crossed toward the center of the room. His eyes caught sight of Sandra Bullock standing alone by a marble pillar, knew Sandra from past film sets and charity events. He remembered her kind smile when she first met him on a movie premiere red carpet. He thought of her warm laugh that filled a room like sunshine. Tonight, though, her shoulders were curved inward, and her gaze was fixed on the polished floor. Her dress, a soft navy fabric, hung with exact elegance, but her posture spoke of worry. Keanu paused. He saw Sandra's fingers curl around a champagne flute, her knuckles white with tension. He noticed the slight tremor in her hand, how her breath caught in little uneven gasps. These details mattered to him because he cared about people, especially those who shone so brightly for others. He had seen too many stars hide pain behind a mask of glamour. He would not let Sandra face this moment alone. He moved closer, stepping lightly so as not to startle her. In his quiet voice, he said, "Hey, Sandra." The sound of his name on his lips seemed to bring her back from her thoughts. Up, her eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, she studied his face, as if measuring whether he was truly there. Then she managed a small, tired smile. "Keanu," she said softly. Her voice held a whisper of relief. She lifted the glass slightly, in greeting, but did not drink. He recognized the signs. She was holding herself together with strength. But that strength was beginning to fray. He nodded toward a nearby table that offered water and light snacks. "Can I get you some water?" he asked. His tone was gentle. He did not rush or push. He simply offered a careful question. Sandra hesitated. The coolness of plain water, he knew, could soothe more than any fancy drink. He smiled and motioned to a passing waiter. "2 glasses, please." When the waiter handed them over, Keanu took one and handed the other to Sandra. She touched the rim of the glass and closed her eyes, taking a slow sip. Keanu watched how the tension in her jaws softened, how her back straightened just a little. He offered her a reassuring nod. She returned the nod and placed her hand lightly on his arm. "Thank you," she whispered. He said nothing, just moved his own glass to his lips and took a sip. The silence between them felt calm, like a gentle pause in a busy song. The chatter and music in the background seemed distant, muffled by the warmth of this private moment. Sandra leaned against the pillar, her expression more open now. Keanu waited until she felt ready to speak. He knew that rushing words could sometimes make things worse. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. "I heard something awful," she said. "Someone said a mean thing about my next movie. It was so cruel." He looked into her eyes and found only honesty there. He could see the hurt, the fear that one rotten comment could grow heavy in her mind. He remembered the times when people had doubted him, when rumors had tried to shape his life. He had learned that kindness could be the strongest shield. "Sorry you heard that," he said. His voice carried genuine sorrow. "That kind of talk isn't fair. Yeah, you've worked hard on that film. You've poured your heart into every scene." Letting his words sink in. "Don't let one voice drown out all the good you've done." Sandra looked down at her glass, her lips pressing together. Then she lifted her head and met his gaze. It felt so sudden. She admitted, "One moment I was excited to share the news, and the next, I just wanted to disappear." He offered her a small, supportive smile. "It's normal to feel that way," he said. "But you don't have to face it on your own." He glanced around the room at other guests who chatted and smiled, none of them aware of this quiet scene. "I'll stand with you." She let out a slow breath that sounded like relief. "Thank you," she said again. They stood side by side, leaning against the cool marble. The soft music flowed around them like a gentle current. Keanu pointed to a small table holding canapes. "Would you like a snack?" "It might help to eat something light." Sandra returned a small smile. "That sounds good," she said. They walked slowly to the table. Keanu selected a small cucumber sandwich and offered it to her. She took it and nodded her thanks, chewing thoughtfully. She seemed to collect her thoughts. He watched her, noting the way her shoulders relaxed as she ate. He knew that kindness and simple company could ease a heavy heart. They talked quietly about lighter things, about a charity event they had both supported last year, about a funny memory on set involving an unexpected rainstorm. Laughter came softly, like wind chimes in a summer breeze. After a few minutes, she wiped her fingers and looked at him with renewed brightness. "I really appreciate you coming over," she said. "It means more than you know." Keanu shrugged lightly as if he had done nothing special. "We look out for each other," he said. "That's what friends do." Sandra looked as if she might say more, then shook her head and smiled, gathering her strength. She straightened her dress and offered him a genuine smile of thanks. Keanu felt a warmth of satisfaction knowing he had helped her feel less alone. As they walked back toward the center of the ballroom, Keanu kept a steady hand near hers, ready to offer support if she needed it. Behind them, the crowd moved like a gentle wave, laughter and music rising once more. In that moment, he knew that simple good deeds, an offer of water, a kind word, a shared laugh, could change everything. And for Sandra Bullock, in that shimmering room of lights and whispers, the kindness of one friend made all the difference. The music swelled as Sandra and Keanu returned to the center of the ballroom. Golden light from the chandeliers danced across polished marble, and laughter echoed around them. The band had moved on to a soft swing number, and couples swept across the floor in gentle rhythm. Sandra felt a flicker of hope as she stood next to Keanu. His calm presence gave her courage. Suddenly, a voice cut through the melody. The rival actor, tall, confident, with an easy grin, raised his glass. He stood on a small platform near the stage, and the crowd's attention shifted toward him. Conversations hushed. He tapped his glass with a fork, and the clear ring caught everyone's ear. The sparkling notes paused the music. All eyes turned his way. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice smooth but cold beneath the polish. "Before we toast to true talent, let's remember that not every star up here deserves our applause. Some shine only by the light of gossip and hype." He glanced toward Sandra with a forced smile. "I, for one, am eager to see if her next film lives up to the noise." A ripple ran through the audience. Some guests exchanged uneasy looks. A few shifted their feet. Others quickly raised their glasses, pretending to join the toast. Sandra's heart pounded so loud she felt certain everyone could hear it. The rumor once whispered now stood in bright light, exposed for all to judge. Keanu felt the tension tighten the room like a drawn bow. He saw Sandra's eyes widen, saw her grip the edge of his suit jacket. He placed a steady hand on her arm, gave a small squeeze. That silent gesture told her he was there. He would not let her face this alone. The rival actor smiled again, a gesture that skipped the warmth of true kindness. He lowered his glass and settled back on his heels, waiting for applause. A few polite claps sounded, but they felt hesitant, like raindrops before a storm. The singer paused mid-note, eyes shifting between the men. The band lowered their instruments, unsure whether to continue. Keanu took a small step forward, raised his own glass, his calm face opening in a gentle expression. He tapped the rim lightly. The clear ring rose above the murmur and the crowds. Focus shifted to him. In that moment, his quiet voice began. "Excuse me," he said, soft but firm enough to carry. "I think we all know that true talent can't be measured by gossip or hype." Heads turned, faces pointed toward Sandra, waiting to see what he would say. Keanu looked at her, saw her trembling lip and watery eyes. He straightened his shoulders, lifted his gaze to the crowd. "I've had the honor to work with Sandra Bullock," he continued, voice steady and kind. "I've seen her kindness on set, her dedication to every single scene, no matter how small. I've watched her give her time and heart freely to causes that matter: children's hospitals, disaster relief, and communities in need." He paused, letting the crowd feel the weight of those words. A murmur of approval passed through the guests. At least a few faces broke into warm smiles. A woman in pearl earrings nodded, her eyes shining. A gentleman in a crisp tuxedo spoke quietly to the person next to him. "She does so much good." Keanu turned slightly so that everyone could see Sandra beside him. He gestured toward her with open hands, as though drawing light to her presence. "That is the work of a true star," he said. "Not someone who needs rumors to mask the real strength of their craft." His calm voice carried no anger, only respect and truth. Sandra felt her chest loosen. She watched the crowd lean in, as if drawn by his words. The rival actor's forced smile began to fade. He had expected a few laughs, a chance to sow doubt. Instead, he saw nods of agreement and heard the gentle hum of supportive voices rise. Keanu paused for a breath. Then he added, "Let us raise our glasses to real talent, to hard work, to kindness, to Sandra Bullock." He lifted his glass higher, and this time the applause came strong and clear. The music restarted, picking up exactly where it had left off. But now the sound felt richer, brighter. Sandra felt tears well up again, but these were tears of relief. She raised her own glass, her smile genuine and warm. Keanu stood beside her, shoulders squared, watching the actor who had insulted her. The man looked down, suddenly small in the glow of so many friendly faces. Around them, people cheered. Some stepped forward to offer congratulations to Sandra. The director she had admired came over to shake her hand. A group of young actors applauded. Loudly, reporters jostled to catch her reaction. All smiles now. No more cruel whispers. Sandra breathed deeply. She felt the heat on her cheeks, but this time it came from joy and pride. She glanced at Keanu, saw the quiet kindness in his eyes, and knew she would never forget this moment. It was more than a rescue, it was proof that truth and respect could rise above cruelty. The rival actor slipped away, his grin gone. He melted into the crowd, unnoticed now. The spotlight returned to Sandra, and she basked in the warmth of applause and good wishes. Keanu gave her a small nod, as if to say, "You're stronger than." Any rumor? In that grand, glittering room, two friends stood side by side. One had faced a barbed insult alone. The other had chosen to stand up and speak the truth. And that single choice, one voice stepping forward, had changed everything. The rumor lost its power, and kindness won the night. ChatGPT said. They moved back toward the center of the room, side by side. The warm glow of crystal chandeliers lit their path. Keanu kept a steady hand near Sandra's elbow, guiding her through the sea of well-dressed guests. Lighter now that the dark words of gossip were pushed aside. Music swelled again, this time with a joyful swing, and couples began to dance in gentle circles. Sandra drew in a deep breath, letting the soft notes of saxophone and piano soothe her. She glanced at Keanu. His calm presence gave her confidence she had not felt moments before. As they reached the open space in front of the stage, a cluster of photographers raised their cameras in unison. Flashbulbs popped like stars bursting in a night sky. The bright lights reflected off Sandra's navy dress, making the fabric shimmer. Softly, she lifted her chin and offered a graceful smile. Keanu stood close, his dark suit contrasting with the warm light. He returned her smile with a nod of encouragement, his eyes kind and steady. In that instant, they looked like two old friends united against any shadow of doubt. Photographers called out Sandra's name, eager to capture the moment. She paused, placing one hand lightly on Keanu's arm, as if to say thank you. Reporters jostled for position, pressing microphones closer. "Sandra, how do you feel after that toast?" one voice asked. Another called, "Keanu, what inspired you to speak up?" They spoke over the music, turning what had been a whispered insult into a moment of honor. Sandra took a deep breath and answered quietly but clearly, I feel very grateful." Her voice was soft, but reporters caught every word. Keanu added, "Sandra deserves every good thing people say about her. She is one of the kindest people." "I know." His words carried through the room. They were not loud, but they were clear. Guests who had been dancing slowed down to listen, heads turned and smiles spread like sunshine. The rival actor who had spoken before watched from across the hall, his confident expression fading as he saw the crowd rally behind them. Leaving slipped silently away, leaving the stage for truth and kindness to shine. Sandra and Keanu stood together as the band moved into a gentle ballad. Couples returned to their tables and servers passed trays of petties, fours, and sparkling water. The soft clatter of plates and gentle laughter filled the air. One waiter knelt to refill Sandra's glass, and she thanked him with warmth. Keanu signaled to the bandleader, who nodded and played a few more soothing bars before returning to the main set list. The music, once laced with tension, now felt like a comforting blanket wrapped around everyone in the room. A group of young actors approached Sandra, their faces bright with admiration. They formed a small semicircle around her. "That was amazing," one of them said. "I've never seen someone stand up like that for a friend." A clear sound that danced above the clinking of glasses. She placed a hand over her heart. "I am lucky to have friends like Keanu," she said. They all nodded and offered congratulations. The energy in the room shifted fully to celebration. Slowly, Sandra and Keanu moved through the crowd, accepting kind words and warm greetings. The director she admired gave her a firm handshake. "I couldn't agree more with Keanu," he said. "You bring so much light to every project." Group of fans clustered near the edge of the room, hoping for autographs. Sandra stopped to sign a few cards, her handwriting neat and careful. She made eye contact with each person, thanking them for their support. Keanu stood back respectfully, his presence calm and protective. Amid all the applause and chatter, Sandra felt a gentle tapping on her shoulder. She turned to find a reporter holding a small notebook. "Ms. Bullock, will you be joining us on the carpet again later for a group photo?" Sandra nodded, feeling fully in control of her own narrative. "Yes, I will," she said with a bright smile. The reporter scribbled quickly. Keanu watched, her pride shining in his eyes. When the lights dimmed slightly for the next award presentation, Sandra took Keanu's arm and moved toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. A side door led to a private lounge. As they passed through, the noise of the main hall softened to a distant hum. Inside the lounge, plush sofas and muted lighting offered a place to rest. Sandra sank into a velvet chair and closed her eyes for a moment. Keanu handed her a glass of sparkling water. "You did wonderfully," he said. She opened her eyes and looked at him, gratitude shining in her gaze. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied softly. He shook his head. "You did it on your own. I simply reminded everyone of the truth." She reached out and touched his hand. "Thank you for reminding me too," she said. They shared a quiet smile, the space between them filled with respect and friendship. Outside the lounge, the gala moved on. Awards were given, speeches were made, and music played on. But for Sandra and Keanu, this small moment in the lounge felt like the heart of the evening. They spoke about lighter things, the charity work they both supported, an upcoming film project, and an idea for a small fundraiser. Each topic brought laughter and shared memories. Time passed gently, unmarked by the outside world's need for headlines. When they finally returned to the main ballroom, the gala was winding down. Mingled and took final photographs by the grand staircase. Sandra and Keanu joined a small group near the exit where a few late-night snacks were arranged. The mood was warm and calm, as though the whole evening had been a triumph of kindness over cruelty. As they prepared to leave, Sandra paused at the grand revolving doors. She looked back at the glittering room one last time. Memories of that dark insult had faded, leaving only the bright moments of truth and support. She turned and offered Keanu a smile that came from deep within. He offered his arm. Together, they stepped out into the cool night air, the city lights greeting them like old friends. In that cool breeze, Sandra felt renewed. She wrapped her coat around her shoulders and let out a soft laugh. "Thank you, Keanu," she said. Again, her voice warm, "for everything." He smiled and offered his arm. Always, he replied. Together, they walked into the night, leaving behind gossip and cruelty, carrying forward only kindness and truth. The next morning, the sun rose over Los Angeles with a soft golden glow. The city moved slowly, at first quiet streets, early joggers, and birds chirping from balcony railings. But inside entertainment offices, phones buzzed and screens lit. Up with the news from the night before. Sandra Bullock's name was everywhere, so was Keanu Reeves. But not for a scandal. Not for drama. For something simple, rare, and powerful. Kindness. Articles filled social media feeds and online magazines. Headlines read, Keanu defends Sandra with class. Sandra Bullock shines through rumors, support from a friend changes everything. Short video clips from the gala showed Keanu raising his glass, speaking with calm strength. Photos captured Sandra's graceful smile beside him, her eyes shining with emotion. The whole world seemed to pause and take notice. Fans reacted with joy. Thousands of comments filled platforms. "We need more moments like this," one person wrote. "Keanu and Sandra are what Hollywood should be," said another. Many shared stories about how Sandra's movies had touched their hearts. Others shared how Keanu's simple and honest way of living had inspired them for years. At Sandra's home, she sat by her window with a cup of tea. The morning was quiet, but her phone kept buzzing. Text messages from friends, fellow actors, and even directors she hadn't spoken to in years filled her inbox. Each one shared a word of support, a thank you, or a message like, "You showed true strength last night." She smiled as she read. Then, one by one, her heart full, she turned to her laptop and opened a few articles. As she scrolled, her eyes fell on a photograph of herself and Keanu standing side by side. There was something powerful about the image to people, standing in honesty. Not trying to win a fight, but simply holding up the truth. She saved the image and set it as her wallpaper. A reminder of what really mattered. Meanwhile, Keanu sat in a small cafe, tucked into a quiet street near his home. He wore his usual simple clothes, a dark jacket, jeans, and sunglasses. He sipped his coffee, flipping through a newspaper. On page 3, there was a small column. Kindness takes center stage at Gala. It mentioned his name briefly, but mostly focused on how the moment had brought a wave of positive energy to an industry so often focused on headlines and clicks. Keanu smiled. Not because he was proud, but because he was relieved. The right message had been heard. Sandra's heart had not been crushed. People had remembered what mattered: dignity, support, and truth. Later that afternoon, Sandra received a call from a young actress she had once mentored. "I just wanted to say thank you," the young woman said over the phone. "Seeing you last night, how you handled it, how you stood tall, it gave me hope. I've been struggling with doubts lately, but now I feel stronger." Sandra's eyes filled with quiet tears. "Thank you," she replied. "You're not alone. I've had those same doubts too, but we rise together." They spoke for a few more minutes, and when Sandra ended the call, she sat in silence for a while, feeling how one moment had spread far beyond that ballroom. A few days later, she was invited to speak at a small event and afternoon gathering of young women in film. The room was not grand, just a simple space with folding chairs and soft lights. Sandra stood in front of them with gentle confidence. She didn't talk about fame or awards. She talked about being human. "People will say things about you," she said. "Sometimes it will hurt. Sometimes you'll want to hide. But if you stay kind, if you remember who you are, you'll get through it. And if you're lucky, someone will be there to remind you, just like Keanu reminded me." The young women in the room clapped, not just politely, but with real feeling. Sandra smiled, feeling lighter than she had in days. Meanwhile, Keanu got a letter in the mail. A handwritten letter from a fan, an older woman from Ohio who had been following his career for years. She wrote, "I watched the video of you and Sandra," I cried. "Not because it was sad, but because it gave me faith again in people. You for standing up for someone with kindness." Keanu folded the letter carefully and placed it in a small wooden box where he kept notes that truly mattered. Behind the scenes, something else began to happen. That same rival actor, the one who had made the cruel comment, began receiving quiet calls from his publicist and team. The audience didn't like it, they said. Should consider apologizing. He thought about it long and hard. Pride held him back at first. But soon he realized what he had said wasn't just a mistake. It had hurt someone. So one morning, a simple apology letter arrived at Sandra's office. It wasn't long, and it didn't try to make excuses. It just said, "I spoke carelessly. I regret it. I didn't deserve that. I'm sorry." Sandra read it and closed her eyes. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need to reply. But she smiled softly, knowing that maybe the moment had created change in more than one person. That evening, Sandra and Keanu met again, this time at a quiet dinner with close friends. No red carpets, no flashing lights, just a few chairs, candles on the table, and the soft clinking of forks on plates. They laughed, shared stories, and talked about the small things in life: books, travel, favorite coffee shops. But at one point, Sandra leaned in and said, "You changed the entire story that night." Keanu looked at her and replied, "No, you already had the story. I just helped remind people how to read it." Sandra smiled. That was his way, always gentle, always honest. As weeks passed, the memory of the gala remained, not as gossip, but as a golden example. People in the industry began speaking more kindly. Even small acts of support became more noticeable. Kindness, somehow, had taken a front seat again. Sandra's film, once the target of a careless remark, went on to receive praise. Audiences loved it, not because of the rumor, not even because of the defense, but because it had heart. Because she had heart. In interviews, she didn't mention the insult. She mentioned the support. She talked about how one friend's voice helped steady hers, and Keanu. He returned to his quiet life, doing what he always did, working hard, giving back, and staying true to himself. But in Hollywood, in offices and sets and studios, the story lived on. A story of a woman who stayed strong, a man who spoke with kindness, and a moment that reminded everyone. Watching, sometimes the most powerful thing you can be is simply good. And that changed everything.